everyone, and welcome. You are watching Eagle News America. I'm Anna Kui, coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. It is Sunday, the 11th day of July, 2021. We have updates from our correspondents across North America, starting with Thomas Likeness in Edmonton, Alberta.
Wildfires are slowing down train traffic in Western Canada.
For environment news, Lori Jarvina in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hoover Dam and Lake Mead water levels at historical lows.
In Washington, D.C., Rose Papaangelis reports about the removal of fencing around the U.S. Capitol 6 months after the riots. In Atlanta, Bureau Chief Philip Toledo reports about First Lady Jill Biden promoting COVID vaccination in Georgia. In Toronto, Joshua Santillana reports about half of Ontario adults having received the COVID-19 vaccine. Bureau Chief Jane Kathleen Gregorio reports about Corpus Christi launching a new branding for the city as the Texas Gulf Coast capital. For ABC Travel, DC Bureau Chief Ace Ramirez and his wife take a trip to Big Island's Hamakua Macadamia Nut Company. For ABC Food in Sacramento, Aika Era shares with us her recipe for tiger butter fudge. And plus, for our roundtable, today is Cheer Up the Lonely Day. Let's talk about ways we make those dear to us smile, especially on gloomy days. Our coverage begins now. The United Nations says the escalating conflict in Afghanistan is causing more suffering across the violence-racked country as it urged for continuous financial aid as security forces battle a wave of violence triggered by a dizzying Taliban offensive.
Pre-existing humanitarian needs are further exacerbated. I noted the drought. We are talking about COVID-19 and now escalation of military activities, escalation of conflict and war is causing more suffering. Due to the current emergency and drought situation, nearly 1/3 of the people in Afghanistan are facing crisis level of food insecurity, and nearly half of all children under 5 are at risk of acute malnutrition. Already this year, 25 humanitarians have lost their lives, been killed while delivering essential life-saving humanitarian assistance. 63 were injured. We would like to thank generosity of our donors who have contributed nearly $450 million this year, with half of the contribution coming from the United States of America. However, the generous contribution of $450 million represents only 37% of the needs. The needs are so much greater. And the continued assistance is needed.
Afghanistan is facing a crisis as the insurgents snap up territory across the countryside, stretching government forces and leading to a fresh wave of internally displaced families, complicated by a renewed outbreak of COVID-19. Afghanistan's Refugees and Repatriation Ministry says in a statement, quote, the escalation of violence by the Taliban terrorist group in the country and the spread of the third wave of COVID-19 have caused a great deal of economic and social unrest, creating concerns and challenges for the people. The ministry says the government's decision emphasizes that host countries should refrain from forcibly deporting Afghan refugees for the next 3 months, adding that the return of Afghans from Europe was worrying. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, there were almost 2.5 million registered refugees from Afghanistan in 2018, the second largest refugee population in the world. The vast majority are in neighboring Pakistan, followed by Iran and Europe. According to data from the UN's Refugee Agency, while more than 570 Afghan refugees voluntarily returned to the country between January and March this year, aided by the UN, just 6 came from outside Pakistan and Iran. Meanwhile, holding a hand next to her knee above the scant growth on her ranch in Colorado, which just as in 2020 and 2018 is again being hit by devastating drought, ranch owner Janie Van Winkle says the grass should be up to here. Wearing a checkered shirt and a persistent smile that bellies her ranch's woes at a time when record high temperatures have been scorching much of the U.S. West, she says, here we are again. She says the soil moisture is just completely depleted. You can dig down 4 feet and there's no moisture in the dirt. So that's the cumulative effect that makes it tougher than previous droughts. But the drought is only one of many challenges facing ranchers, not only in Mesa County where she lives, but across the West. She says the drought's right here in your face. You never get away from that. She says it feels like they are always under attack, whether it's fake meat, wolves, animal rights, environmental issues, you name it. Colorado provides a case study of the modern tensions between cities and the countryside, between the metropolis of Denver, a haven for digital startups and progressive movements, and sparsely inhabited regions where ranchers spend hours on horseback checking on their grazing herds. Janie Van Winkle, her husband Howard, and their son Dean own about 450 head of cattle after selling 70 last fall in expectation of the coming drought, and 35 in June as their hay stock began to run low. They are constantly juggling between buying more feed as its price rises and selling more cattle. While the survival of the ranch is not immediately threatened, this will be a bad year. Janie Van Winkle estimates that her cattle will weigh 100 to 120 pounds, or 45 to 55 kilograms, less than usual when they are sold to feedlots in the fall.
Most of us can survive 1 year and maybe even 2, but this is the 3rd year out of 4 years that we've had this happen. So they either buy feed, sell cows, or both, a combination of both, which is what we will do. We'll do a combination of both. We're currently looking to buy some hay out of Kansas.
Well, I believe the climate is changing. I mean, these consecutive droughts, that's a pretty telltale sign that something is changing. There are ranchers that are completely against it and don't believe it's a thing, and I struggle with that because you can't tell me that these 4 years of drought here all stacked together, something isn't happening.
People before us, my grandparents, they figured it out, and we have to do the same. We have to find out how to do this.
In other news, authorities say the death toll from the collapse of an apartment building in Florida has reached 86 after workers sifting through the debris pile recovered 7 more bodies. Mayor Daniela Levine Cava of Miami-Dade County says it is a staggering and heartbreaking number that affects all of us very, very deeply. She tells reporters that 62 of the corpses search for remains. Teams working around the clock did announce one tiny miracle. They found a cat wandering nearby that had belonged to a family living on the tower's 9th floor. The short-haired black cat named Binks was turned over to relatives of the family. The 12-story Champlain Tower South partially collapsed without warning in the early hours of June 24. Investigators are continuing to study possible reasons for the disaster, but an earlier engineering report had flagged significant structural problems. With a still standing portion of the building posing danger to search teams, the authorities on Sunday brought it down in a controlled implosion. Since then, bodies have been recovered at a faster pace. Miami-Dade Fire Chief Alan Kaminsky says search efforts continue. He says there was no definite timeline for completing the job, but they are definitely making progress. Now for COVID-related news, Australia announces its first coronavirus-related death in the current Sydney virus outbreak on Sunday as the country's biggest city struggles to bring the Delta variant under control. The woman in her 90s died Saturday, hours after testing positive for COVID-19, and was also the first death from a locally acquired infection in Australia this year. It came as authorities announced a record 77 new cases and warned that numbers were expected to spike above 100 on Monday. Gladys Berejiklian, New South Wales Premier, cautions that this number will rise in the coming days.
I'll be shocked if it's less than 100 this time tomorrow of additional new cases. So we can't stress enough the importance of not only following the rules, but also realising the risk that the people who will suffer the most is, if you don't worry about yourself, that's fine, even though it's affecting people of all age groups. If you don't worry about yourself, that's your decision. But think about your closest family members, your closest people in your life. They're the people that are most impacted.
Sydney is now in its third week of lockdown, but the number of new cases continues to grow among a population that is overwhelmingly unvaccinated. Lockdown rules were tightened Friday, and Berejiklian warned that stay-at-home orders were expected to remain in place unless there was a dramatic turnaround. Sydney has recorded 566 new infections since the beginning of the outbreak in mid-June. While that is low compared to most global cities, Australia has taken a zero-tolerance approach to widespread community transmission throughout the pandemic. Authorities have been quick to impose restrictions in an attempt to stamp out clusters early, and the country's borders remain largely shut, with only about 10% of Australians fully vaccinated. The government has launched a new advertising campaign Sunday, encouraging people to arm yourself against COVID-19 by getting jabbed, though vaccines are yet to be offered to most under 40s. Chief Medical Officer Paul Kelly said other graphic adverts would be broadcast in Sydney, urging people to follow stay-at-home orders as people step up enforcement amid reports that flouting of the rules was widespread. Australia has recorded just over 31,000 cases of COVID-19 and 911 deaths in a population of about 25 million to date. Actor-director Sean Penn, who mobilized a huge network to help with the COVID crisis in the U.S., says in a press conference at the Cannes Film Festival that watching the Trump administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, quote, felt like there was someone with a machine gun gunning down communities that were the most vulnerable from a turret at the White House.
We were not only as a country, but as a world let down and ultimately neglected, misinformed, had truth and reason assaulted under what was in all terms an obscene administration, humanly and politically. When my team and I would come home from test and vaccination sites at night, particularly during the testing period during the Trump administration, the maddening news, it really felt like there was someone in a machine gun gunning down communities that were the most vulnerable from a turret at the White House.
Here's today's COVID-19 numbers. According to the Coronavirus Resource Center of Johns Hopkins University in Medicine, as of 6 p.m. Eastern Time Sunday, July 11, 2021, the number of cases of COVID-19 reported worldwide is now more than 186,683,000. Top three on the list of countries with recorded cases, with the U.S. over 33.8 million, followed by India over 30.8 million, and Brazil over 19 million. This virus has now already claimed more than 4,028,000 lives worldwide. Again, the top three countries with the most number of COVID-19 related deaths are U.S., more than 607,000, followed by Brazil with more than 532,000, and India, more than 408,000. Total vaccine doses administered worldwide is now at 3,435,073,721. Up next, updates from Washington, Georgia, and Alberta. Eagle News America continues. Stay with us.
Factual.
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
Timely information. Balanced, not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Aguila Pilipinas. A one-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Aguila Provincia. Tune into Mata ng Agila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Agila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to Thanks our health outdoor.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News America. I'm Anna Kui in Las Vegas. Not only are COVID restrictions easing in the nation's capital, so are security measures around the U.S. Capitol. In Washington, D.C., Rose Papa Angeles tells us welcome changes around the district.
Thank you. It's been 6 months since rioters breached a perimeter off and entered the U.S. Capitol. Today, there is a semblance of things getting back to normal. The fencing and barricades surrounding the Capitol building are being removed. And it is a welcome sight to the residents of the District of Columbia. The U.S. Capitol Police began dismantling the barricades on Friday. The bars connecting the 8-foot or 2.4-meter black metal fencing were the first to go. Next, the fence itself was taken out early Saturday and continues through the weekend. Thousands of National Guard troops were stationed at the Capitol following the attack in January, and a wide security boundary complete with razor wire turned the building into a fortress for months. An outer perimeter was dismantled in March, but the fencing, Capitol Hill traffic detours, and a ban on visitors has irritated lawmakers from both parties. Acting U.S. Capitol Police Chief Yugananda Pittman says the department is extremely grateful for the support it continues to receive in its critical mission to protect the Capitol. She adds that they are prepared to quickly enhance security posture should the need arise. In a letter to lawmakers this week, Senate Sergeant-at-Arms Karen Gibson says U.S. Capitol Police will continue to monitor intelligence information and the associated threat environment, and that if threat conditions warrant, the temporary fencing can be reinstalled quickly. The taking down of the fencing is based on the current threat environment and recent enhancements to the Capitol Police's response capabilities. For some weather update, it is currently 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius here in the nation's capital. In Washington, D.C., Rose Papa Angeles, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you.
Thank you, Rose, for your report. First Lady Jill Biden joins the administration in promoting vaccine efficacy. A few days ago, she took a trip to Georgia in a push to convince the unvaccinated to get the jab. Bureau Chief Philip Toledo files this report.
Thanks. As much of the United States is easing restrictions and many people are looking to a return to pre-pandemic normalcy, Georgia is one of the states that's lagging behind in its vaccination rates. Early on, this was due to a lack of supply, but now it seems to be a lack of interest. In an attempt to boost interest in the public in taking the COVID vaccine, First Lady of the United States, Dr. Jill Biden, visited Georgia last Thursday. Dr. Biden arrived in Savannah, near the Georgia coast, on Thursday and spoke at Beach High School with healthcare workers to discuss efforts to vaccinate the community. Reports quote her as referring to Georgia's vaccination percentage as, quote, "That's just not enough. And that's why we came to Savannah today. Joined by Democratic Senator Ralph Warnock, the First Lady then made a surprise visit to a local restaurant, Green Truck Neighborhood Pub, which the senator told her had great pies, which, by the way, seems to be corroborated by over 2,000 reviews on Google. She grabbed one before heading to the Scripps National Spelling Bee Finals. As of this weekend, only about 44% of the state of Georgia has received at least one dose of the vaccine. The overall case count is sitting at just over 900,000, but we're starting to see new daily case counts with an upward trend after a low this past June. In Atlanta, Georgia, Philip Toledo, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you.
Thank you, Philip, for that update. Now in Canada, train traffic is dramatically slowed down as wildfires continue to burn in the western region of the country. Joining us live tonight, we have Bureau Chief Thomas Likeness to tell us more. Thomas?
Thanks, Anna. You know, the Western Canadian province of British Columbia, it's just a beautiful place. People that live there are so proud of that scenery that it's even advertised on their license plates. That's right. You see a car from British Columbia, and the slogan on the plate reads, "Beautiful British Columbia." The province is very mountainous, and it's heavily forested. It's just gorgeous normally. But this year is very dry as a dog biscuit, the saying goes. Weeks of scorching temperatures and no rain have left forests parched. It's created the perfect environment for fire. And what is this to do with railways? Anna had mentioned railways. Well, dozens of cargo trains. They're loaded with containers of goods and so on. They snake their way through the mountain passes, bringing the rest of Canada supplies that arrived at the ports of coastal BC. Now think about it for a minute. You've got those steel wheels turning on metal rails, and they throw off sparks, and that can ignite the tinder-dry brush that's adjacent to the tracks. You know, it was so bad that at the end of this week, the fire risk was so high that the government actually shut down all rail traffic in parts of the province for 2 days, just resumed this morning on the main lines. But it's resumed with restrictions. First and foremost, speed limits for the train are being reduced. And Canada's two major railways, there's two of them, Canadian National and Canadian Pacific, they have to ensure that they can respond to any fires detected along their tracks within an hour. They've got 60 minutes. That's it. And if they can't control the fire, then they must notify the nearest fire service. Now, in areas with extreme risk, the two railways must they've got to conduct at least 10 fire protection patrols every 24 hours. So they're walking back and forth, patrolling those tracks, looking for fire. As well, they must remove any combustible materials, vegetation, branches, and so on from the track beds so they don't ignite. Conductors on the train, well, they have to be eagle-eyed and report any fire that they spot. These restrictions, they're going to remain in effect until the end of October. Now, trains are one hazard that the government control. They've got the regulations. Unfortunately, the other hazard is beyond their control, and that's lightning. So here's hoping for some cooler temperatures and a lot of rain. Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you, Thomas, for that report. Now, you mentioned the restrictions, reduced speed. What's the impact of the restrictions on the railways?
Well, the restrictions certainly have an impact, but so do the fires as well. You see, there's been considerable damage by the fires to the rail lines in parts of the province, and this, along with the new regulations, slower train speeds, and the fact that they were stopped for a couple of days, have added to a backlog of goods that are sitting in the ports along the coast. There are literally thousands of rail cars that traverse the province every day, bringing goods and supplies to customers across Canada. Not only that, there's traffic going the other way too. Farmers in Western Canada ship their crops for export through Vancouver ports. So while we're getting goods from the ports going east, there's grain and oil seeds and other stuff going west to the ports. Crude oil, that's another one. Crude oil shipped to refineries in the Pacific Northwest will be affected. That's being held up and is also affecting the West Coast ports themselves. I was just reading in Turkey Sea News, that's a international shipping magazine. Ships will be lined up in the harbor at Vancouver. They can't unload because the ports are clogged with goods waiting to be loaded onto trains. There's no place to put those containers. So the impact of these fires, well, it's a bottleneck for the exports. They're holding up imports. It's a real problem, and it's going to take a while for this to clear. Anna?
They certainly can't have that, right? I mean, in addition, I was just thinking, I'm sure there's also COVID-related, backlog of supply there, and then you think about, you add the wildfires. It's just a lot of things just sitting there.
It's
Thomas,
one thing after another.
Yeah. Now, last week you mentioned the wildfire. I believe you mentioned 176 wildfire in British Columbia. Can you give us an update? What's the latest there?
Well, we've just about doubled that. As of today, there's 306 active fires in British Columbia. 64 of them started in the last 2 days. And some of them are admittedly small, and they'll manage to put them out in a few hours. But there's some pretty big ones there. Almost 2/3 of these fires have been caused by lightning. 6% of the active ones right now were of human origin, and that would include things like railways. 30% of them, they just don't know what sparked those blazes. 22% out of control, and this is what I don't want to see. The weather outlook is not looking good. Temperatures in the mid-30s or higher for later this week. That hot weather there is perfect for thunderstorms, and with thunderstorms, what do you get? Lightning. And those lightning strikes, they cause more fires. So, and Anna, one other thing that's beginning to be a concern is smoke. Oh, and one other thing, drones. I don't believe this. Some fool was flying a drone near a wildfire, and that prompted BC Wildfire Service to ground a helicopter in the region. The service even put out a warning on Twitter. It says, if a drone collides with firefighting aircraft, it's deadly consequences. Deadly. It adds with, anyone interfering with fire control faces a fine up to $100,000 and a year in jail. But I can't believe it. Hopefully people will grow up and realize their social media videos have consequences. Anna?
Oh, Thomas, lots and lots of things happening there. I mean, this must also be hurting the province's tourism sector. How is that being affected?
Just as we said a few moments ago, it's one thing after another. The pandemic finally being tamed. The hospitality sector looking forward to better times. Wildfires, though, that's dashed a lot of those hopes. Some regions of the province are telling people to stay away. It's too dangerous. Resorts have been shut down in some places in the interior. There's a lot of regions that have evacuation orders, or they've been put on alert to be ready to evacuate. And as well, heavy smoke, it's a hazard to people with breathing difficulties and even healthy individuals. I think if you're on vacation, you're going to find that unpleasant. So that's also going to be a deterrent to visitors. There's also the prospect of road closures as fires spread, so certain destinations just may not be reachable. Resort operators are hoping, they're just hoping the situation changes. We get some of that much needed rain and the temperatures drop. But, right now, Anna, it's a waiting game. Anna?
Yes, Thomas, thank you for all the update. But before I let you go, you mentioned a pandemic is starting to be tamed there. Can you give us an update on your vaccination rate in Canada?
Well, it's kind of a complete reversal of what I talked about several weeks ago, when we simply didn't have the supply of vaccine. Now that we've got plenty of vaccine, immunization has progressed well. It is plateauing, though. Right now across Canada, 77%, more than 3/4 with one dose, 43% fully vaccinated. In my province, 74% with one dose, 53% fully vaccinated. But as I said, it's plateauing, and that's troubling. The lines at vaccine clinics are shorter. There are people who are hesitant, particularly young people. And think about it. Remember back when we were all young, We were invincible. This thing isn't going to get me. They think they're invincible. And these are the people that government is trying to reach. Campaigns have been launched using social media. But, there are still people who say they're hesitant. But people who are being hospitalized with COVID these days, the ones dying from COVID now, they're the unvaccinated one. Number of infectious disease specialists, they're telling us there will be a fourth wave this fall in Canada. But they say it's going to be different from last year because this time around, those who will be hospitalized, those who will die, are those who are not immunized. In other words, the unvaccinated become the vulnerable ones in the next wave. So those are the minds that have to get changed. And I know people will argue you can still get COVID if you've had both shots. And that's true. That's true. But here's the difference. If I, as a fully vaccinated individual, becomes infected, the symptoms are likely to be mild. The risk of serious illness, hospitalization, and death for a fully vaccinated person, almost nil. Anna?
Right, Thomas. So hopefully, we can just, same here and same everywhere, where the vaccination rate, like you mentioned, it's plateauing, and it's it's going to be that last group of population group that's really going to take some time to convince them. I don't know what else will convince them, Thomas. But those are the great numbers. Glad to hear it. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Anna, and take care.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show, Thomas. Still to come, updates from Ontario, Nevada, and Texas. Eagle News America will return in a moment. Stay with us.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Anna Cui in Las Vegas. Now we're still in Canada. Let's go now to Ontario, where a vaccination milestone has been reached as more than half of adults in the province have received the COVID-19 vaccine. Eagle News correspondent Joshua Santillana tells us what city officials are saying about it.
On July 8, Ontario, Canada reported that more than half of adults in the province have received their second dose of COVID-19 vaccine dose due to an increase in supply and the ability to now combine vaccines. Since May of this year, the province began accelerating second dose appointments. Earlier this week, on July 5, as part of Step 2 in the roadmap to reopen, Ontario also expanded its second dose eligibility to individuals aged 12 and older, now surpassing its projected target date for accelerated doses by the end of August 2021. Deputy Premier and Minister of Health Christine Elliott gave an update on Twitter, stating that 16,395,063 doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered to Ontarians, creating a new record for the province. In Toronto, Canada's largest city and Ontario's capital, Mayor John Tory announced that the city has also reached a new milestone in Team Toronto's COVID-19 vaccine distribution. Take a look.
I'm proud to say that as of now, more than 3.7 million vaccine doses have been administered in the City of Toronto. Over 50% of adults are fully vaccinated. We're making great progress, and that progress will continue thanks to Team Toronto, which has been hard at work getting more people vaccinated every single day.
Adults in the 18 to 24 age group show the highest percentage of vaccination rates, with nearly 90% of individuals in Toronto receiving their first dose, and the 25 to 29 age group at second, with nearly 84%. Mayor Tory continues to emphasize the effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines and that combining the vaccines are safe. Take a look.
I also want to emphasize the confidence that people should have in any of these vaccines and any combination of vaccines between first and second doses. I say that not as a doctor, but as somebody who has myself received a first dose that was AstraZeneca and a second dose that was Moderna. I did this not as a matter of deliberate choice, but as a matter of available supply. But I also did it after obtaining medical advice to the effect that this combination of vaccines, or any combination of vaccines for that matter, was both safe and effective. I urge Torontonians to similarly seek out their own advice in this regard as to the safety of all vaccines, including Moderna, and we have a plentiful supply of that in Ontario, and the safety and effectiveness of any combination of vaccines, including Moderna, Pfizer, and others, for people getting their second dose.
As of July 10, Ontario reports a total of 1,710 active cases, to which 32 new cases are in the Waterloo region, 27 in the Grey Bruce, 23 in Toronto, 21 in Peel region, 8 in York region, 6 in Halton, and 3 in Durham region. As Ontario prepares for an early move to Step 3 of the roadmap to reopen on July 16, Ontarians are continually encouraged to sign up for their COVID-19 vaccines if they haven't already. In Toronto, Joshua Santayana, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Alarming water levels are a concern in Nevada as Hoover Dam and Lake Mead record historical lows. To tell us more, Eagle News correspondent Lori Jarvina is with us tonight. Lori?
Thank you, Anna, and greetings to all our viewers in America and abroad. I hope everyone is staying safe, and if you have extreme heat like here in Las Vegas, I hope you're staying nice and cool. The recent extreme weather is definitely one of the contributing factors causing the Hoover Dam and Lake Mead water levels to reach historical lows. The Hoover Dam and Lake Mead span the Nevada-Arizona state line and are located about 35 miles southeast of Las Vegas in the Black Canyon of the Colorado River. The Hoover Dam is a concrete thick arch structure, 726.4 feet high and 1,244 feet long. The dam contains 3.25 million cubic yards of concrete. Total concrete in the dam and adjacent structures is 4.4 million cubic yards. On the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation website, it states that the Hoover Dam is a testimony to a country's ability to construct monolithic projects in the midst of adverse conditions. Built during the Depression, thousands of men and their families came to Black Canyon to tame the Colorado River. It took less than 5 years in a harsh and barren land to build the largest dam of its time. Now, years later, Hoover Dam still stands as a world-renowned structure. The dam is a National Historic Landmark and has been rated by the American Society of Civil Engineers as one of America's 7 modern civil engineering wonders. Completed in 1936, Hoover Dam was built to provide irrigation water and hydroelectric power and to control seasonal flooding of the Colorado River, which made downstream settlement possible. But due to intense summer heat and the drought crisis plaguing the western United States, reservoir water levels are drastically dropping and affecting the water supply. Lake Mead, which was created by the Hoover Dam near Las Vegas, is the nation's largest reservoir, and it is at its lowest level since the lake filled after the construction of the Hoover Dam in the 1930s. As of July 11th, Mead.uslakes.info reports that the Lake Mead water level is currently at 1,068 feet above sea level, or 35% of its total capacity, 161 feet below full pool capacity of 1,229 feet. As the chart shows, just since March of this year, the level has dropped 20 feet, and as compared to the same time last year, it is down 16 feet. Lake Mead supplies water to Arizona, Nevada, California, and Mexico. Lake Mead is only one of several reservoirs in Nevada and California on track for potential record lows this summer, possibly jeopardizing some of these reservoirs' ability to generate hydroelectric power. The combination of human causes and intensified climate warming over the past 20 years have some calling it now a mega drought and questioning when and if the drought is going to end. Today's forecast is sunny and clear with the National Weather Service issuing an excessive heat warning. Today's high is 115 degrees Fahrenheit or 46 degrees Celsius. In Las Vegas, Nevada, Lori Jarvina, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you, Lori, for your report. I know it's really hot today, right? We're hoping that excessive heat warning will, well, they said it's good up to tomorrow night, so we can't wait for that. Now, you talked about conserving drought and the importance of conserving water. What's being done in Las Vegas to do that?
Well, here in Las Vegas, actually, there's a water conservation effort by the Las Vegas Valley Water District, and they actually do patrols around and check on neighborhoods and installations where they may be wasting water, and they will cite and give citations for that. So it's interesting, though, in Las Vegas that a lot of the water is actually recycled. So it's interesting to know that, in the resorts areas, too, that a lot of that water that is being used is being recycled. So Las Vegas is doing its part to conserve water. Anna?
Yes. Also, I believe most car washes also have that recycling process. So that's good to know, right? And I know, if only each of us will do our part, each household, do our part in conserving water. If everyone did that, that would be a huge help, right? So what are some of the things that you do, you and your family, Lori?
That is a great point if we all did our part, Anna. So every drop counts. So at least, the little things, if we can make them into daily habits, like, for example, I used to wash dishes by hand, but we just got in the habit of using a dishwasher. So we kind of make sure that the dishwasher is full up before we use it. So that saves water there. Also, like you mentioned, the car washes, that's something I wasn't really even considering before. But now, to take it one step further, just don't wash your car if you can stand it. And so, but yes, the car wash, recycling the water there. Just every little thing we can do to conserve water. We live here in the desert, and we're affected by it directly, but also to help the neighboring states that depend on, all the water that is being used from Lake Mead. Anna?
Yes, Lori. Well, thank you so much for that update, and stick around for our roundtable. We'll talk about how a smile can cheer up somebody who's feeling lonely. We'll talk to you in a little bit. In other news, Corpus Christi has launched a new branding for the city as the Texas Gulf Coast capital. Bureau Chief Jane Kathleen Gregorio reports.
Thank you, and howdy from the Lone Star State. I'm Jane Kathleen Gregorio, here today at Whataburger Field in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Tourism is the second largest industry sector in Corpus Christi and is critical to the local economy. As the most visited regional destination with more than 10.61 million visitors each year, bringing in more than $1.5 billion into the local economy, tourism employs over 24,000 people and generates enough sales tax revenues annually to cover 40% of the police and 30% of the fire department's budget, and even can help completely build 26 miles of roads each year. To kick off its rebranding campaign for Corpus Christi to be known as the Gulf Coast capital, officials from Visit Corpus Christi, the tourism arm of the city, as well as Mayor Paulette Guajardo, held a Gulf Coast Capital Community Night event in partnership with the city's minor league baseball team, the Corpus Christi Hooks, during its Friday night game against the Midland Hounds, where Mayor Guajardo opened the game throwing the first pitch. The event also included a press conference to educate the public about how the program will utilize expert knowledge from locals combined with social media interactions to help draw more attention to Corpus Christi tourism.
We live in a place that 11 million people a year choose to come for vacation, and that's something that we need to think about as well. This is a very popular place to come, and we are very fortunate again to be here. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily Zertucci, our Vice President of Marketing and Communications.
In Corpus Christi, we go bigger and bolder than anyone else, and we set our sights on becoming the Gulf Coast capital because we want to go beyond our Corpus Christi borders and let as many people as possible join in on the fun.
We invite movers and shakers in the area to partner with Visit Corpus Christi in displaying the vibrance of the city and all it has to offer through their eyes. Our marketing and communications team has determined that in order to show how we coast, we need a group of people who are bold in showing themselves throughout our city. We're calling on individuals who have the ability to lead and influence others to do the same.
So tourism is our second largest industry. So as we continue to lead the way, we're going to make sure that all of you have a part in it, because we're a team and we certainly need everyone here in this community to help us move that forward.
Hi, I am Mayor Paulette Guajardo from Corpus Christi, Texas, and today is so important because we are launching a new campaign called Gulf Coast Capital. And its importance is that we are taking pride in our community. We are located here on the Gulf Coast, and we are in proximity to the beach by a few miles. So it's a beautiful place to visit, beautiful place to live, and we are just so proud of it that we want our residents to take pride in our community by using the hashtag #CCMe and also the hashtag Gulf Coast Capital, because we are the Gulf Coast Capital. But today the launch is at the Hooks game, and that's important because we take a lot of pride in our Hooks baseball team, and so I'll be throwing out the first pitch to get everything going.
My name is Brittany Mute. I'm the host of Leading Ladies of Corpus Christi, and whenever I found out about this new campaign for Corpus Christi to be known as the Gulf Coast Capital, it just made perfect sense. Like, why haven't we been doing this sooner? I'm born and raised in Corpus Christi, and so I've always known of its potential, and I know a lot of locals have as well. And so to see this Corpus Christi Pride, getting the kind of traction that it is fantastic. I'm so excited for this.
Hi, I'm Emily Zertucci, and I am the Vice President of Marketing for Visit Corpus Christi. So Gulf Coast Capital Night aims to rally the community together, all of Corpus Christi, to join hands in celebrating our community, really so we can understand and show people and to travel and visit Corpus Christi, because we are the Gulf Coast capital for coastal and outdoor recreational experiences. We want people to go out and celebrate and use the hashtag #CCMe to get everyone together and talk about the positive word of mouth about Corpus Christi, things to see and do. We are right here on the Gulf Coast, and it is a unique destination, and we really want to just show the world how much we radiate from the pride in our community.
In Corpus Christi, Texas, I'm Jane Kathleen Gregorio, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you for your report, Jane Kathleen. Up next, EBC Travel, EBC Food, and today's roundtable about ways we make someone smile, because today is Cheer Up the Lonely Day. Eagle News America will be right back. Stay with us.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
Wondered how macadamia nuts are prepared for the market? Eagle News correspondent Ace Ramirez and his wife Kathy let us tag along on their trip to Hamakua Macadamia Nut Company in Kauai, Hawaii, where they also got a chance to chat with Angie, a Kababayan worker there. Kababayan, for those of you who do not speak Tagalog, means a fellow Filipino. Let's take a look.
5%. They are exited through the bottom of the tanks through an auger system, taken into our factory, and that's where the cracking process begins.
We flew to the big island of Hawaii and visited some cool spots. Check this out.
We're at the Hamakua Macadamia Nut Factory. Where we're going to go. Nuts! Lawag City, pero right now we are at the Hamakua Macadamia Nut Factory. That's right. Gaano katagal na tong factory na to?
So the factory has been here like 15 years.
Farm
is in South Corners and Hamakua Island.
Mostly na mga trabahador natin sa loob, mga Pinoy.
Yeah, Pinoy. Hindi masisipag.
Masisipag kasi.
Kasi number one, Pinoy.
That's right.
Maayos naman ang working conditions ninyo. Masaya kasi kayo sa employer nyo.
Maganda yung ano nila, yung
Hawaii is number 3 in the world in growing macadamia nuts, next to South Africa and Australia. The Hamakua Macadamia Nut Company grows, processes, and markets only Hawaiian-grown nuts. They receive mac nuts from about 200 small independent island farms. After cracking and sorting process, the mac nuts are brought here for processing and packaging before they are shipped anywhere in the world. Team packaging. So bago i-box, nilalagay muna yung parang foil bag. Bago nila ilagay yung nuts. It's going to Costco, California. But before it does, it's going through a quality control process. Yun, itong parang, that's an x-ray machine. Just to make sure. Bakit nila in-x-ray?
Para malaman nila kung may
foreign materials. So parang quality control na rin. That itong packaged product na to ng macadamia nuts, walang foreign materials inside. That's how great they adhere to the quality control in this company. So first, i-scoop nila and they weigh it from the flavoring panner. Each box is 25 pounds, right? Siyempre, hindi mo mawala yung taste test. Yan. Try all that. Spam. Yan ang spam macadamia. So batiin mo yung mga mga kamag-anak mo sa Lawag.
Hello, lahat sa Lawag, mga anak ko. Nicolas family is from Martin.
Kikoman soy sauce. Okay. Let's try this.
What's happening?
Kamusta?
Ang sarap!
When in Hawaii?
Go nuts!
Go nuts! From the Big Island in Hawaii, Ace and Kathy Ramirez, we live in interesting times.
I just have to say thank you, Ace and Kathy, for that such a fun fun way to see that factory. Now, you owe me a box of chocolate-covered macadamia nuts, Ace. I like that for dessert. And speaking of dessert, Aika Era of our Sacramento team shares with us this recipe for tiger butter fudge. Thank you, Aika, for that delicious-looking dessert. Now, it's time for a roundtable. July 11th is National Cheer Up the Lonely Day. Now, it's just me and Lori here today. Lori, do you know anyone? We have a few seconds left in our show. You know anybody who's feeling lonely? And you know, what would you do to make them smile?
Well, you know, right now, working virtually from home, I always just keep in contact with my coworkers. And when some people talk about the weather, I usually just talk about food. And that is always something that we can connect and smile over, whether you're trying to eat better or just had something fancy or a special dessert. So that definitely, you know, cheers people up. And I do think it's important to reach out to people, especially in this environment right now, keep them from feeling lonely. Anna?
Exactly, Lori, right? We never know, you know what they say, like you never know whether it's your coworker or just anybody, a stranger, you never know what they're carrying on their backpack, as they say, right? So, you know, it's always just good to, even just smiling, you know, just smiling at them and giving them that nod. I think it's very uplifting, right?
Agree, Anna.
Well, Lori, I hate to cut it short, but now it's time to, you know, to thank our frontline workers, first responders, and essential workers with a much-deserved round of applause. Now, these are the group of people that can truly use a smile, a hug, or any friendly gesture that you can give them. That is today's Eagle News America. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Anna Kui, and we live in interesting times.
Start up your weekday mornings with edutainment, news and information kasama ang inyong paboritong Net25 shows. Samahan ang inyong paboritong morning barkada sa Pambansang Almusal.